Gorou is one of the 2 new characters that's coming into Genshin Impact in the next patch, but what you don't know is the impact that he's probably going to have on the Geo element, which most people consider to be mediocre or kind of meh. In this video, I'm going to break down the team that he's going to fit in the best with, which would most likely be considered an S tier team and should be able to output DPS similar to the current meta teams such as Morgana or the national team. We're going to talk about why he fits so well in the team and the type of impact that he has on the rest of the characters when compared to other supports like Bennet. There are 2 variations for what I'd like to call the new S tier Geo Team. The difference between them being is who exactly the main DPS is. This position will be switched between Noelle or Itto depending on the user, but both teams should have a very similar performance and function in almost the exact same way. Noelle and Itto are going to be so great as main DPS options because of their insane AoE damage potential. When doing normal attacks, they're able to hit multiple enemies. Noelle can often hit up to 5 enemies, which basically distributes or multiplies her total damage output by 5. Of course, this will skew in the favor of single target damage dealers, such as Ningguang, when faced in situations where you're fighting a single boss such as the Magukenki. But in this Abyss rotation, we have to fight 3 Magukenkis at the same time, so characters such as Noelle or Itto, who have more AoE, have an upper hand compared to single target damage dealers like Yoimiya or Ningguang. The rest of the team consists of Albedo, Zhongli, and Gorou. Albedo is a sub damage dealer who works very well off-field and with all of his new buffs can deal insane damage. The 2 main damage sources in this team are Noelle and Albedo. Ideally, we want to fill the other supporting positions with characters that can buff both of these 2. That's where Zhongli and Gorou fall into place. Zhongli gives a universal resistance shred to any character wearing his shield, which will work perfectly to buff Albedo's blossom damage and Noelle or Itto's normal hit damage. Gorou provides tons of buffs that we're going to look at in the next slide. First of all, the buffs that Gorou provides with his E skill and his Q are effectively the same, and they depend on the number of Geo characters that you have in your team. With one character, we get a flat defense buff. This can be translated into an attack buff that increases Noelle's damage, because when she activates her ult, she gains attack based off of her total defense. This will result in about a 490 flat attack increase to Noelle's attack. When you have 3 Geo characters on the team, you get a 15% Geo bonus. This is the same as equipping a 2-piece Archaic Petra set to the character that's dealing the damage. Next, Gorou's passive number 2 gives the team a 25 defense increase for 12 seconds after using his ultimate. Once again, this will have a major impact on characters that deal damage, which scales off of their defense. Finally, if and when we're able to get Gorou to C6, he's going to give a whopping 40% crit damage to the entire team. There's very few buffers or ways to increase critical damage. Often you need to rely on using a headpiece or a weapon, or having a natural ascension stat into it. So being able to buff your whole team with 40% crit damage is going to be insane. And definitely worth getting Gorou to C6 if you can, or when you can. Even if you're free to play, then just focusing on Gorou banners will be worth it, trying to ignore or even catch some of the 5 stars on them. Your Geo Team's damage output is really going to skyrocket to the next level. So from this we can see that all of Gorou's buffs revolve around defense increases and Geo damage bonus. So the question is, which characters can be buffed by this? And so far we only have 2, these being Noelle and Albedo. Once Itto's also in the game, he will also fall into this class of scaling off of defense. If we take a closer look at how Gorou affects Noelle before she uses her ultimate, then we can see that the combination of a 371 flat defense increase and a 25% defense increase, which we're going to assume scales off of Noelle's base defense, can be added together to get a 571 defense increase from Gorou. When multiplying this by Noelle's Q and C6 bonuses, we should be able to give Noelle a 753 flat attack bonus just from all the defense buffs that Gorou provides her with. On this slide, I just showed the team and how each character is buffed by Gorou. Obviously Gorou also buffs himself, but I suspect that he's not going to be built for doing too much damage. If we do build Gorou to be doing more damage, then his buffs will also only benefit him more. So first of all, Noelle, Albedo, and Itto can all take full advantage of every buff that Gorou provides. For Zhongli, on the other hand, if you have built him as a sub DPS and you're hitting 50 to 70k with his ult, then he'll be able to make use of the 15% geo damage bonus and the 40% crit damage bonus if you have Gorou at C6. But Zhongli has no way to convert the defense buff that Gorou gives him into damage, and so that's why the green arrow is a little bit smaller for him, because the buffs that Gorou gives him are utilized to a lesser extent than Albedo or Noelle. Next, I want to compare Bennet and Gorou to each other. Bennet's a lot more straightforward. He only provides one buff, which scales off of his own base attack. Total base attack is calculated by adding the base attack of the character and the base attack of the weapon that they're using. So in Bennet's case, if we want to maximize the total base attack, we want to equip him with a weapon that has the highest base attack possible. A typical one that people use if they have it is the Aquila Favonia, as it has one of the highest base attacks in the game, at 674. A more free-to-play option would be the Festering Desire at 510 base attack, due to the great passive and the energy recharge that it gives Bennet. Another great free-to-play option that you can guarantee yourself is a Blackcliff Sword, which has a fairly high base attack and can help Bennet do decent damage. Highlighting two of these that most people use, which would be the Aquila Favonia and Festering Desire, we can see that the attack buffs that Bennet gives to the party members that are standing on his ultimate are 1029 and 834 flat attack boosts. If we look at how this buff will affect the rest of the team, we can see that the main DPS units will gain a large increase in damage. Assuming that you have Albedo built around his E skill, giving him an extra attack buff will not increase his damage whatsoever. Bennet will only buff Albedo's burst damage, and most people will likely have Albedo build for defense and doing as much damage with his E skill or Solar Isotoma as he can. If you have Zhongli built as a burst support, then Bennet's attack buff will actually increase his damage quite significantly. The problem I have with Zhongli is that often when using his burst, I feel like I'm missing out on more potential DPS just because of how long it takes to activate it. Building Zhongli based more off of an HP build in order to strengthen his shield and make sure it doesn't break and therefore lasts longer could result in the same effect as buffing his burst in terms of overall DPS, because of the damage bonus that it gives the rest of your team when existing on the field. But if you have a Zhongli with a Staff of Homa and you want him to be hitting insane numbers, then in that case Bennet might be a really good option for your Geo Team. Now if we compare the buffs that Gorou and Bennet give side to side, we can see that Gorou's defense buff equates to almost the same as Bennet's entire attack buff, just from the defense scaling from people like Noelle or Itto. When we add on the 15% geo damage bonus from Gorou's E and ultimate, this should likely be already better than Bennet's entire buff. If we're able to get Gorou to C6, then undoubtedly he will be providing a much greater buff to the entire team than Bennet will. The last type of buffs that we can be talking about that this team will be utilizing are Noblesse Buffs, and you can put these both on Gorou or Bennet, and these will only once again impact Noelle slightly and maybe Zhongli if he's doing any damage. Albedo basically won't get any benefit from these, just a little bit when he's using his ult. Zhongli's buff is much more universal than a Noblesse buff because it will increase everybody's damage on the entire team while his shield exists. So I would say it's much more important to make sure that you have a Zhongli on the team rather than a Noblesse set that someone needs to use. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and in the future I'd like to make a couple more videos on Gorou, talking about which artifact sets are the best for him and probably which weapons we should use for him, whether we should go for a damage build or more of a support build. Thanks for watching the video, have a great day, and goodbye!